So, Texas is heading into a big, dramatic U.S. Senate runoff between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. And the media is treating this like it's the political Super Bowl. But let me translate this into plain English. Marine Corps, plain English. This is not the Super Bowl. This is a bar fight being played out in a locker room to decide who gets to play in the Super Bowl, while most Texans are outside the stadium being told, don't worry, we'll pick your team for you. And I know how this sounds. I'm a Libertarian. I already sound like the guy yelling from outside the stadium. But here's the thing. I'm not mad that they are fighting. I'm mad that they're trying to call this our game. Now, if you've watched my Denton County piece, you've already seen this movie. Different cast, same script. 4 candidates go in, nobody gets 50%, and suddenly we're in overtime democracy. And in this case, John Cornyn comes out ahead by about 1.2%, which is just enough to say, I didn't win, but I get to try again. So now we've got a May 26th runoff. Cornyn's the establishment guy, 4 Senate terms. That's nearly 25 years. At this point, he's not a senator. He's the luggage you never get rid of. And then you've got Ken Paxton running as the insurgent outsider, which is bold because nothing screams outsider like holding statewide office since Obama's first term. That's like your landlord calling himself a squatter. And hovering over all of this is Donald Trump, who teased an endorsement like it was the season finale of a reality show, and then said, I like both candidates very much. Which is not leadership. That's what you say when your kids are fighting and you don't want to figure out who started it. So now we've got a high dollar, high drama, nationally watched fight. And again, the assumption is that this matters to all Texans. It doesn't. At least not the way that they're telling you. Because this runoff is not about choosing who represents Texas. It's about choosing which radicalized version of the Texas GOP gets to represent Texas. And they're doing that through a system that filters out people at every stage. Let's start with the big one, closed primaries. If you're not a Republican, you don't get a vote. Not discouraged, not marginalized, flat out excluded. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody likes to say out loud. That group of excluded voters, that's independents, libertarians, disengaged voters, people who just don't like either party. That's not a fringe, that's the majority. So before we even get to November, before the real election starts, the system has already decided who gets to participate in narrowing the choices. Now, layer in the runoff system. Sounds reasonable, right? Hey, we want a majority winner. But here's how it actually plays out. Turnout drops hard. Because normal people with jobs, families, lives, don't usually come back for GOP election the sequel. So who does? Only the most committed, the most ideological, the people who treat politics like a hobby and a personality trait. So instead of broadening the consensus, you're actually concentrating power into a smaller, more extreme slice of the electorate. That's not majority rule, that's motivated minority rule with better attendance. And then we get to money in the media. By the time you're even hearing about this race, the donors have already placed their bets. Campaigns have already decided their messaging. Media has already decided which of these narratives matter. So what looks like a wide open contest is actually a heavily pre-shaped menu. You're not choosing the meal, you're picking from what's already been cooked. Now, normally this would be just another weird low turnout runoff. But this one's different because it's not some down ballot race. This is a heavyweight fight between 2 of the most powerful Republicans in Texas. You've got Cornyn, establishment, stability, institutional backing. You got Paxton, grassroots support, insurgent messaging, time for a change. And both campaigns are going scorched earth, ads, attacks, everything. Because this isn't just about winning a seat, it's about controlling the direction of the GOP party. And the national media is eating this up like it's a bellwether for Texas. But they keep skipping one very important detail. This is a Republican primary runoff. Democrats have already selected their candidate. Libertarians, yeah, we still exist. We'll finalize our candidate in April. This fight, it's internal. It's a family argument being broadcast like it's a statewide referendum. So let's call this what it actually is. This runoff is not about who represents Texas. It's about which faction of one party wins control of that party. And if you're not in that party, you're not part of the decision. The general election is the only election where all Texans get to vote. Everything before that, it's just the parties themselves deciding what your choices are going to be. And look, I'm not saying don't pay attention. I'm saying pay attention to the right thing. Because if a system consistently excludes most voters early, amplifies the most extreme voices late, and then tells everyone, hey, this is democracy, maybe the issue isn't the candidates. Maybe the issue is a system that treats voters like an audience instead of participants. And as a Marine, I was taught something very simple. If you're not in the room when the decisions are made, you're not part of the mission. And right now, most Texans aren't even in the building. We're still outside the stadium watching the two guys fight in the locker room and being told that this is democracy, which is a weird way to run a country, but a great way to run a bar fight.